It was a bright Sunday morning in early summer, the kind that usually smelled of fresh-cut grass and hope. But for Evan Callister, it only smelled like coffee gone cold and a house too quiet for comfort. 2 months had passed since the divorce papers were signed, and every morning since had felt like waking up to a wound that refused to heal. His 7-year-old daughter, Sophie, was the only reason he still got out of bed. She was sunshine with pigtails, his little heartbeat in a world that had gone grey. Evan had once believed marriage meant forever, but forever had walked out the front door with a suitcase and tears on her cheeks, saying she needed to find herself. What she left behind was not just a marriage, it was a man trying to piece together fatherhood and heartbreak under one roof. He learned how to braid Sophie's hair from YouTube, how to fake a smile at parent-teacher meetings, and how to sleep on the side of the bed that used to be hers. But he never learned how to stop missing her laughter echoing through the kitchen. And then, on that ordinary Sunday, a knock came at the door that would change everything. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal, because stories like this remind us that sometimes love returns in the most unexpected ways. When Evan opened the door, he froze. Standing there was Clara, his ex-wife's younger sister. She looked almost like her, the same dark hair, the same green eyes, but where his ex-wife carried the chill of regret, Clara carried warmth, though now it flickered under worry. She was holding a small duffel bag and looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Clara," he managed to whisper. Her lips trembled before she spoke. "Evan, I didn't know where else to go." He could have asked 1,000 questions, why she was here, why her eyes were red, why fate thought it funny to send another Callister woman to his doorstep, but he didn't. Something in her voice sounded fragile, like glass that could shatter if pressed too hard. So he stepped aside and let her in. Clara had always been the gentle one, the quiet heart of her family. When Evan and her sister Jenna got married, Clara was the one who arranged the flowers and stayed late to help clean after the reception. She had smiled so wide that day, so genuinely happy for them. But now that smile was gone. As she sat at the kitchen table, her fingers wrapped around a mug of tea, she finally said it. "Jenna's gone." Evan's chest tightened. "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" Clara's eyes filled with tears. "She left. She packed her things, left her job, left everything. She said she was done with family, with expectations, with everything. I tried calling her, but her numbers disconnected." Evan sat back, stunned. He'd known Jenna was restless, but to disappear completely? To walk away not just from him, but from Sophie too? That was unthinkable. Clara's voice broke again. "I came because I didn't know what else to do. I thought maybe she'd come here. Or at least that you'd want to know." The house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Evan didn't know what to say. He'd spent months trying to let go of her, and now this. That night, Clara stayed in the guest room. Sophie, in her small, curious way, peeked through the doorway and asked, "Daddy, who's that?" "That's Aunt Clara, sweetheart," he said softly. "She's just staying for a while." Sophie's face lit up. "Does she like pancakes?" Evan smiled. "I think she does." The days that followed slowly stitched something fragile but real into their lives. Clara helped make breakfast, took Sophie to the park, and somehow managed to fill the house with a gentleness it had been missing. She was careful not to overstep, but she was there, truly there, in ways that Jenna hadn't been in years. At first, Evan resisted it. Every time he saw Clara laughing with Sophie, guilt twisted in his chest. It felt wrong to feel comforted by her presence. But Clara never tried to replace anyone. She simply cared. When Evan came home from late shifts at the auto shop, there would be dinner waiting and soft music playing in the background. Sometimes she'd be sitting on the porch with Sophie watching fireflies. It was simple, quiet, but it felt like healing. One evening, after Sophie had gone to bed, Evan found Clara sitting outside again. The moon was full, the air soft with summer. She looked up and smiled faintly. "Do you ever wonder if we're allowed to be happy again?" she asked. Evan leaned against the railing. "Every day." Clara nodded, staring at the stars. "I used to think happiness came from big moments, weddings, promotions, plans. But maybe it's just mornings with pancakes and kids' laughter. Maybe it's this." Her words sank deep. He realized how much he'd been holding on to pain, how tightly he'd clung to what was lost instead of what was still here. Weeks passed, and Clara's presence became part of their small, delicate world. She got a temporary job at the local library, helped Sophie with school projects, and filled the home with soft laughter again. Neighbors began to notice, whispering things that made Evan uncomfortable. But the truth was undeniable. The woman who had come broken was helping rebuild what was once shattered. Then one afternoon, something happened that shook everything again. A letter arrived, postmarked from another state, written in Jenna's familiar handwriting. It was short, almost detached. She said she was sorry for how things ended, but that she wasn't coming back. She was starting over, far away. And she asked Evan to tell Sophie that she loved her, but not to wait for her. Evan read it twice, then handed it silently to Clara. She read it, her eyes glistening with both pain and understanding. "She really is gone," she whispered. Evan nodded. "Yeah." That night, Clara found him in the kitchen, staring blankly at the letter. Without a word, she walked over and placed her hand on his. "You did everything you could," she said softly. "You loved her the best way you knew how. But maybe now, it's time to love what's still here." It was that simple sentence that broke something open inside him. He realized that love didn't always mean holding on. Sometimes it meant letting go, so that something new could take root. The following morning, Evan woke up to laughter. Sophie and Clara were making pancakes again. Batter splattered across the counter. The sunlight poured through the window, and for the first time in months, he felt peace. As days turned into weeks, Evan found himself smiling more. He started spending more time with Clara and Sophie. Trips to the lake, movie nights, long walks. Slowly, gently, life began to bloom again. One afternoon, while fixing the fence outside, he looked up and saw Clara helping Sophie water the garden. The sight stopped him cold. It wasn't just comfort he felt anymore, it was something deeper, something terrifying and beautiful. He tried to ignore it, to bury it under the label of gratitude. But love doesn't stay buried long. It has a way of finding the light. It was Sophie who noticed first. One night she climbed onto Evan's lap and whispered, "Daddy, you smile more when Aunt Clara's around." He chuckled, embarrassed. "Do I?" She nodded seriously. "You should keep her." That simple innocence made his chest tighten, because deep down he wished he could. But Clara, ever the careful heart, kept her distance. She must have felt it too, the growing warmth, the quiet bond, but she never crossed the line. Until one evening when everything changed. Sophie had a small performance at school, a recital she'd been nervous about for weeks. She looked out into the audience, searching. Evan waved, but her eyes went straight to Clara, who was clapping and smiling through tears. When Sophie took her bow, she ran straight into Clara's arms, whispering, "I did it." In that moment, Evan saw it all so clearly. The way Clara had filled every void Jenna left behind, not with obligation, but with love. After the show, as the crowd thinned, he walked over to her. "You've been her safe place," he said quietly. Clara blinked away tears. "And she's been mine." For a long moment they stood there, neither speaking. Then, almost without thinking, Evan reached out and took her hand. It was a simple touch, but it carried the weight of two broken people who had somehow found wholeness in each other. That summer, life began anew. Clara moved into a small apartment nearby, but spent most days at Evan's house. She and Sophie baked, planted flowers, and filled every room with laughter. And though no one said it out loud, everyone who saw them together knew something extraordinary was happening. Months later, one golden afternoon, Evan stood in the yard watching Sophie play while Clara sat on the porch reading. He walked up, sat beside her, and said softly, "I never thought happiness would knock on my door twice." Clara smiled, that same quiet warmth shining in her eyes. Sometimes it just comes wearing a familiar face. They sat there in silence, the kind of silence that feels like home. And as the sun dipped low, Evan realized that sometimes life doesn't give you what you expect. It gives you what you need. Love didn't return to him in the form of the woman who left. It came back through the woman who stayed.